All right. I want to talk about this thing from Patanjali, from the Yoga Sutras. Uh, this like impermanence, permanence thing. But in the terms of the Yoga Sutras, ignorance is essentially seen as not a proper discernment of what is impermanent and what is permanent, let's say. Impermanence and permanence. But I feel what's most important is what's impermanent and discerning what is impermanent. So when the head when the mental system hears this idea of impermanence and discerning what is impermanent, I think it's important to highlight what it does, which is immediately goes out from the I thought or the thought me, and it looks out and it identifies everything as impermanent. So, from the standpoint of what is impermanent, what is permanent, the mental system immediately goes the world is impermanent, ever changing, nature is ever changing, objects are ever changing and impermanent. And then somebody might go, well, the body's impermanent, that's always changing. And then they'll say the thoughts are also impermanent, and the emotions are impermanent, those are ever changing. And it will go on, yeah? But it's always looking from the thought me. Now, the thought me is also impermanent, that comes and goes. When you go to sleep at night, you're gone. When you wake up in the morning, you're seemingly there. And that me thought is presenting itself as a permanent thing. So that me thought is playing God. It's claiming its own permanence, yeah, and then it's locating or saying everything else is impermanent. But the thing is, if you see from a me thought that takes itself as permanent, it's taking everything else as permanent. So if the mental is taken and the body are taken as permanent, independent things, it automatically is setting everything up to take everything else as permanent. So I can say, for instance, that everything is impermanent, but if the I who's saying it is taken to be permanent, then it's pretty much a nil statement to say everything is permanent. You're still stuck in ignorance. Actually, probably even a harder duality than not saying anything at all. Saying that I'm permanent from the impermanence. I feel that's super important in the whole thing of not to, because the false subjectivity or the false God, as Ramana would say, is presenting as permanent. Me, or the I thought, that's taken to be permanent. And then it's saying all the objects of its view are of impermanence. But the thing is, if you're identified as that, you're seeing from an impermanent stance. And then you're tied to its idea that everything is impermanent except me, let's say. And that's a sticky seat to be in. And it's often missed, I feel. That's why, especially in yoga practice, especially in like contemporary mainstream yoga, this idea is not even talked about. Suffering just continues on, yeah? But if the me thought is taken as permanent, then there's going to be all kinds of things done in order to try to stabilize that under the illusion or the mistaken idea that it's permanent. But if it's seen, if the me thought, I am seen as impermanent, then all of the movements, all of the money, all of the stuff that's spent trying to make it still and trying to stabilize in pleasure wouldn't be done, because you would just accept its impermanence. You would accept the impermanence of the body and the thinking, and you would accept the impermanence of the me movement. And then when it changes, when it feels not so good or when it feels great, you don't go either way. Yeah? Based on that the ignorance has been corrected. But if we live under the ignorance that the I thought is permanent, then everything, and it's saying everything else is impermanent, it's not actually being taken that way. Because if there's a permanent me here, it's automatically putting you in the duality of a permanent out there. It doesn't matter how much I say the world is unreal. It's taken to be real because this is taken to be real. Yeah? So discerning what is impermanent includes you and me. It's like the unreal real thing that Ramana says. All that needs to be done is to be seen what is unreal. Well, the thing is, you are part of the unreal. Jay is part of the unreal. Jay does not see the unreal. Jay is part of the unreal. Yeah. It is an impermanent, ever-changing thing. I am this way, I am that way. It always sits on the I, which is taking itself to be permanent. It's saying everything else is changing, but I'm changing, yeah? The I movement is also changing. That's coming and going as well. So Hong Po said, open both hands. It would be opening one hand on the objects, which are taken to be impermanent. It would also be opening the hand on the subject, which is taking itself to be permanent. And that would sit you back into something much more stable, like open awareness, whatever you want to call it. But as soon as there's a mental movement, now it's presenting, the impermanence is popping up within the ever-present openness, let's say. So the I thought needs to be put under, it has to be under the label of impermanent because it's part of the movie, not the screen itself. But if we listen to the I thought and identify as it, it's presenting itself as the other way. It's presenting itself as the God, essentially, or the only permanent thing, which is looking at all the other impermanent things. It's like I can see my thoughts, but that I who's seeing the thoughts, presenting as the thinker or the viewer of the thoughts, is taking itself to be permanent and then saying the thoughts are impermanent. But the thing is, this is also impermanent. This is also changing, and these are definitely changing. This is all changing, yeah? It's amazing because the mental system tries to break itself into this duality. Thoughts, I'm here seeing the thoughts. No, the I'm here seeing the thoughts is one of the thoughts that comes and goes. Yeah. Oh man, that's so good. And then the senses can obviously be the same way because they're impermanent. Yes? Sense, object, object's changing, this is changing. Psh. So really, the point that you're seeing from, yeah, if that's sitting in the me, it's presenting as a permanent thing looking at an impermanent world. And it's saying impermanent world, but from its own mistaken permanence. And from that mistaken permanence, it's not an impermanent world. Yeah? And if it is an impermanent world, which it is, but from a standpoint of permanence, it can only see other. It can't, you can't do anything else, yeah? So from that duality, now that impermanent world has the ability to affect me, who is taking to be permanent. Oh, it's permanent, yeah? But the real killer, I feel, is that if you take the I thought, or me, if J is taken to be permanent, then there's a real urge to get out of that. Or to try to stabilize it in a pleasurable place, which it can't do because it's impermanent. But when it's taken to be permanent, the amount of stuff that will be done, because you take it very seriously if the I thought is permanent. It's taken very seriously. And if that thought's taken to be permanent, like we said, everything after it is taken to be permanent, including all of the thoughts. So then all those thoughts are taken extremely seriously. Based on those are my thoughts, that my being a permanent thing, or presenting as a permanent thing. If you don't see that that's impermanent, then this is taken super seriously. And when it proves its impermanence and changes, you will be seemingly losing it. Yeah? So in the discernment, you are part of what is impermanent. The you who is trying to identify what is impermanent is part of the impermanence. So not that, not that, not that, not the eyes, not the thoughts. Well, I'm seeing, well, you're not that I either, yeah? So if you're using negation, or seeing what you're not, yeah? The voice inside of your head that starts locating what it's not, that gets also not thatted. It's like a silent negation. That's why I love the listening thing, because whatever's heard is not what is hearing. And you can hear your head say I. You can see it come and go. And then you can hear your head go, I'm the hearer. It's right there, you know. But it's taken to be permanent. We're listening to its idea that it's permanent, which is false. It's part of the impermanent. And to me, that's like where the suffering really starts. That's where it really starts. Because if it's taken to be permanent, we listen to it. And then we rely on the thoughts and the mental system. And that puts us in all kinds of crazy situations, especially if you come from addiction recovery. Because self-reliance will always fail us. Self-reliance. So if self, J, is taken to not be ever-changing and impermanent, then J is taken seriously. And then I start to rely on J, and then all J's conditioning starts chanting all this crazy stuff. And if I'm taking it to be permanent and real, I'm going to listen to it, and then it's going to drive this body and this life in the wrong direction. Yeah? So that would be all based on taking what is not permanent and saying that it's an independent, permanent thing. Then the thoughts and everything are taken quite seriously. And when it comes to spiritual practice, the mental system always wants to get out of itself because it thinks it's permanent. Yeah, the discernment of what is permanent and impermanent is from before the mental system. It's from before the I thought. So it always wants to get out of itself under its mistaken idea that J is permanent. J always wants to get out of itself. But self cannot get out of self, but it will continue to chant, I'm bound, yeah? Or I'm enlightened, which is probably even worse. So it's either way, you're bound. But the enlightenment one, you're probably bound more. You're double bound. So, that's really cool. J will always want to get out of J based on the idea that J is permanent. But the discernment would negate that idea, that J is impermanent. So it doesn't matter how much J thinks about wanting to get out of J, it ain't getting out. But I'm not J, that's the thing. You are not the you. Yeah? You are not the you. And the you will keep trying to get out of itself. It will continue to try to get out of itself. Whether it be spiritual practice, drug addiction, or alcoholism, it will continue to try to get out of itself because it's taking itself to be a permanent thing, which it's not. It comes and goes. It comes and goes. When we stop grasping on to its mistaken identity that it's permanent, you land in something that doesn't seem to change. The only way you could know that the I thought is changing, coming and going, would be from the seat, yes, of the unchanging. Or the seatless seat, let's say. So that discernment would be very important. Because the mental system doesn't understand its impermanence. It's always taking itself to be a permanent thing. And in so doing, it wants to get out of that because it's very uncomfortable. But it doesn't catch on. So in a way, the teachings are not even for the brain. Yeah? The teachings are for what you are before that. And they're applied to it. That's why yoga and Buddhist philosophy can be challenging, because it's not really for you, it's about you. It's about you to identify the mistaken understandings of the mental system, like I'm a permanent, independent thing, being the foremost mistaken thing. Yeah, if I am taking myself to be a permanent, independent thing, all of the thoughts and ideas, no matter how insane they are taken to be real and permanent. And mine, which is the real crux of me listening to them, doesn't matter how insane they are. Yeah. But if the thoughts are unreal, but also the idea of the thinker, which is one of the thoughts, is unreal or non-permanent, then it would be foolish to start grasping at those thoughts. Whether they say you should go drink, or whether they say you're bound and you need to do all of these things. Both things, I'm bound and I'm enlightened. It's bondage either way. It's bondage either way. Because it's taking the I to be a permanent thing. That's unreal to me. That's really, man, that's so good. Ah, that's like the discernment of yoga, I feel. And if that discernment is mistaken, it's quite dangerous. That's why I feel if yoga is taught another way outside of what the text would say or whatever the message of yoga would say, it's extremely harmful. Extremely harmful. Meaning people die because of that. That would be considered extremely harmful, I feel. Because what happens if that I thought is taken to be permanent, then yoga is presented in this way that I am permanent. And then it's used to try to get, as self trying to get out of itself, and it can't do it. It can't do it. But you will be bound to the constant addiction of the mental system trying to get out of itself through whatever, ice baths or spiritual practice or whatever, yeah. But the practice is about discerning, because you are not the body and the mind. That's the message. That's the message. If the I thought, which is part of the brain, meaning the body and the mind, is taken to be permanent, you are bound to it constantly trying to get out of itself. So it's beautiful because you're not that. Yeah? So that has to be identified so that it can stop being grasped onto, and then you land in something that's much less changing. Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. I think we'll leave it there. That's been that brings such a great relief. So at least for me, maybe it'll buzz some other guitar strings. All right.